Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
And we are recording. SJ, aka Sooj Tucker, welcome to Weird Web Radio. It is awesome to have you here.
Thank you ever so much, Lonnie. It is truly my pleasure.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. So, first things first, for all you folks out there, and apparently I talked to a few this morning who did not know who you were.
Ooh.
We're remedying that right away.
They gonna learn today. They gonna
learn today. So, from some of your bio, S.J. Tucker is the voice of Lore at the Campfire, the sharp laughter of modern myth, the performing songwriter who's proud to contribute to the soundtrack of our collective imagination. Well loved at Vanish and witchy events at home and abroad since 2002, she wields an award-winning body of original music known for changing lives and healing wounded hearts. I mean, that alone sounds like quite an accomplishment.
Well, thank you. I like to think so.
Yeah. Little pattern interrupt as we go along.
Sure.
There is quite a story in your bio alone. Mostly, let's just say you create awesome music, touch hearts and lives, fire up imagination, keep people in touch with the magical and the mythical, and do your thing. And I love it.
Thank you. I love it too, and I could not be more grateful that we're looking at 18 years of getting to drive around and sing to people full time, and not having to take a break and go do a 9-to-5. And it's because people are not only willing to give me a chance and give this music a chance that they've never heard of, even after all this time, and even after the shit that we've been through in the early part of this decade so far. Mm-hmm. But because they're willing to tell me that they did. So that bit in my bio about changing lives and healing wounded hearts is mostly word for word what fans have said when they've had a chance to let me know and have taken the time, thank y'all, and had the courage to be real with me. Because one of my goals is to be real with them as a performer, as a magical practitioner, as a weirdo, as all the aspects of me that come to the surface whenever I interact with somebody else, whether it's through a screen or face to face. And it's been obviously for most of us, those of us who aren't essential workers and didn't have any other choice than to go ahead and go to work and interact with people through all the COVID. It's been on a screen. It hasn't been face to face for a while.
That's true. I mean, the Troth, of which I've been a member of for many years, served as an officer in various forms. We just had our first in-person, Troth Moot, our annual gathering of members for the first time since 2019. And needless to say, there was a lot of hugs and catching up all around from some of us who've been part of it for a long time. It was really cool. I did see, speaking of your music, I saw today, in fact, on Facebook, you were pretty stoked to announce that it was Mischief Day.
Yes, I have a record called Mischief that came out in 2010, and it's July 16th as we sit here talking. And so July 16, 2010 was the CD release party for that I had in the Seattle area. And for me, it was a big success. It was effectively a house concert in somebody's backyard, but we don't have to measure it along industry lines when you're out here in your little weird witchy niche the way that I am. And that's the way I like it. That is the way I like it. So that record is 12 years old today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. And my career is old enough to vote. My full-time music career is old enough to vote now, which mostly doesn't make me go and think about how much time has passed, and mostly just makes me say, wow, am I a lucky kid or what? Because I totally am. And I have grown up in a lot of ways since I started this whole thing, but my friends of mine have said, you still have a childlike spirit. And I say, well, as long as that's a good thing and doesn't slow anybody else down, then I will continue that.
Yeah. One thing I can't help myself but ask And anybody out there who's ever played guitar will understand this, since you've been playing guitar and as a performer professionally now.
I started learning guitar in 1992, and
Oh,
yes,
boy.
it hurt. Yes, it hurt.
Yeah.
Yes, my fingers hurt. They still do.
They still do.
It's worth it. It's worth the pain.
I did martial arts and jujitsu and whatnot for all those years you were playing guitar, until one leg injury after another made me think of other hobbies 3 years ago.
You're a roller skating man. Yes.
Yes.
Remember that correctly?
Yes.
You were a roller skating
That's
man.
right. I love roller skating. It is my jam. And it makes me sad. That's completely off topic. How dare you? No, it makes me sad that roller rinks are closing all over the country, but outdoor skating's really caught on. So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
What I want to ask you about is I took up guitar about 3 years ago. One, I'm mad at myself I didn't do it sooner, because it turns out I got a little bit of knack for it.
Oh, good
Two,
for you.
when do bar chords stop hurting?
Well, no one who's listening will be able to see this, but I'll hold up my hand for you. This is all I got. On the piano, my hand is about an octave and one key past an octave. That's the entirety of my reach. And it doesn't have to do with your reach necessarily. I know it's got to do with your hand strength. And I don't have a good answer. I think it's got to be different for everybody, because if I'm going to play bar chords for an entire song, yeah, I'm going to be hurting at the end of it. But I also had recent first experiences with tendinitis that had to do with carrying my son around for the first few years of his life. You know, it's so common among new moms that they call it mommy thumb. Like, legit, that is.
Oh, wow.
That is one of the common names for it. And I'm like, you motherfuckers didn't tell me, but you didn't warn me about this. You knew I played guitar. Ooh, I was mad. And some days I still just have a minute when my hands just don't want to work. But that reminds me to slow down and to be a little more patient with myself, which I know we can all use. So yeah. I don't have a good answer for the bar chords question. I think the bad answer is never. But right. On the heels of the never is don't give up, because you will make those bar chords your bitch. You will.
Yeah, that's the mission. I like that. That should be on a T-shirt or something.
This is why we make faces when we play guitar, because it's so good, but it hurts so good and it hurts so bad at the same time.
Yeah, I'm convinced this is why, like, smoking weed is so prevalent with reggae musicians, because reggae is nothing but bar chords.
Yeah. You gotta get something to get you through the pain, and
gotta kill
medicine.
The pain, right?
Medicine is waking up to how therapeutic it can be.
Yeah, and something else I noticed too was when I announced you were going to be on the show, Lauren Crow Thacker, who is the current elected steer of the Troth. Congratulations!
I was really
Lauren.
hoping you were going to bring up her name, because if she didn't bring me up first, I wanted to tell you. I was like, Lonnie, we went to high school together.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's a good Sooj and Lauren story that would really surprise people out there that Lauren doesn't want you to tell us?
Well, I don't know if she wouldn't want me to tell us. I'm sure she's proud of this, and I hope she is, because I am. Ren and I went to poetry nights together when we were teenagers, and we were at a school which I will not name, that is still open in beautiful downtown Hot Springs, Arkansas. People, I don't know quite who started it in the Department of Education here in Arkansas, but Arkansas schools are not in the best of shape, as most of our public schools in this world are. But this was a math and science magnet kind of high school. But they put us all together in what used to be a Catholic hospital. I swear I'm not making this up. It's still there. It's still a school today. And they thought, oh yeah, let's put really overly bright, intelligent whiz kids from the age of 14 and 18 into a boarding school situation in a place that is haunted as fuck. What could go wrong? So Ren and I were in some of the earlier classes, and I think that some things have gotten figured out since, and now it's math, science, and the arts. Like, oh yeah, we might as well give the artsy kids a little concession here. I'm like, yeah, thanks guys, too little, too late. Anyhow, Wednesday night, a member of the local community who was a Buddhist and a minister would come to the school and offer to sign out any of the students who wanted to go to poetry night down the street. At the time, it was the Majestic Hotel, which unfortunately was condemned and is no longer standing. It was an incredible place, also haunted as fuck. Y'all look it up if you want. And we got to, it was free therapy essentially for us kids of an artsy weirdo bent who wanted just a little bit of time away from the college prep intensity that was going on and the energies that we were having to process through our non-adult bodies on a regular basis, living in this situation, and having our windows blocked with like blockers that the maintenance crew came in and screwed down because they were probably all worried we were going to be climbing out and jumping out and no telling what all. And we did, and we would have, my dad, who was a woodworker, came and took that blocker off my window so that I could have some fresh air. Thank you. But yeah, poetry night was a big memory that if I could just walk up to her and say, "Hey, Ren, poetry night," and we would both get these huge grins on our faces. So it was like an open mic, you know what I mean? So as a performer, I was a theater kid. I was in choir, and then this open mic scene opened up to me, and I met people who did slam poetry. And so my slam poetry roots go way back, as far as my music roots do. And Ren is tied up in that.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's a side of Lauren that I just didn't know. So,
yeah, she has been
cool.
believing me. She has believed in me in a real long time. And in recent years, she worked with one of the local pagan prides and was part of the team that brought me in to perform and get paid. Thank you, Arkansas Pagan Pride. I love you.
That is good. Yeah. And listen, if you're putting on events, pay your people.
Yep.
At least your performers, right?
Yes, and you would not be surprised because I'm sure you've heard everything.
No, I've heard pretty horrifying things, actually, the way performers and presenters get treated.
Well, but I recognize that part of it is that some people are just clueless about what performers and presenters need at any given time. And coming out of it with the years of experience that I have now, coming back to a certain extent from COVID, like I'm not willing to do a whole tour of indoor shows yet because we're not out of the woods. New variants are coming left and right as fast as they can. But outdoor events, yeah, I'm in discussion with a few, and I have one or two indoor events here and there that I feel safe about, and a couple that I'm like, should I still go to this? I don't know. But I'm trying to be gentle with myself and everybody and have a little extra patience as we sort of figure out what gatherings and events are going to look like in the witchy world and beyond, now that we have these new concerns put in place and these new protocols put in place. I hope, please keep COVID protocols in place, people. And also haven't done it in a while. Like, I'm hella rusty. Several of the other performers I know are rusty. So of course, event organizers are going to be rusty too, whether they acknowledge that in themselves or not. So I'm trying to have a little extra patience for them and for myself as we enter into discussions about events. But that doesn't mean I'm willing to put up with some bullshit. And having the time away from the road with COVID, and also with my own sort of self-funded version of musician maternity leave kind of happening at the same time. There was a big overlap there. I learned how to deal with some of the things up with which I will no longer put, shall we say. And I learned sort of to value myself a little bit higher as someone who could be a bit of a draw for events. And so my saying yes magic and my saying no magic got a little stronger just by staying in one place and being less of a nomad and less of a public face over the last couple of years. And I did not see that coming, not in any way.
Yeah, I would gather that's a surprise to a lot of people who have followed you over the years. Since you have this experience of, being a performer at events in the past, pre-COVID, the way you've done these online events and things during COVID, and now that you're kind of venturing out again, I guess I know there's got to be at least one or two event organizers listening to this, right?
I hope so.
From your perspective,
I like your podcast, and I want them to like it too.
Thank you. From your perspective, like what advice would you give event organizers now, especially within the pagan witchy sphere? Because we are so, um, I don't know, we're smaller as a group overall,
Yeah, yeah,
and
for
the
sure.
events can be very niche and they can be try to attract wider audiences, but it's still within that framework. Well, I guess from your perspective as the performer, how can they as event organizers turn this into something that's more welcoming, more open, but yet still make you eh, feel welcome and safe?
Well, I have it. There's a little list of things that comes to mind that I've shared before with folks one on one, and I'll try to remember what they all are before my brain gets ahead of itself. Um, Number one would be don't get in a hurry. If you have to put a deposit on an event space or something like that, and I know that almost every event is going to have to do that, and you're worried that COVID might shoot you down again and everybody's heart get broken for another year, don't get in a hurry. Online events are always an option. And I would love to encourage any and all event organizers who are listening. And I know it can be a real pain in the ass because I do it myself. Try the best you can to keep an online option open so that you can include the folks that cannot travel or cannot live with the risk, who are immunocompromised or broke, which a lot of us are, or
Yeah.
cannot get to a real live in-person event for any reason, because it, in a lot of ways, it turned out to be not too much to ask to have events
Mm-hmm.
be online. And so why couldn't we have both? And I realize when you're out in the woods, sometimes it's impossible to have online and face-to-face running concurrently. But, we don't have to have it all figured out this year. But please continue to think about it and continue to have folks on your board, folks on your team, whatever, who will help you not get burned out just trying to figure out how to make the tech work and keep an online option of some kind going. There's ways to have people on site with Wi-Fi enabled cameras who can shoot a feed back to StreamYard or Zencaster or whatever service you happen to use. It can be done. I know that it's daunting because it's not the way we used to do things, but really, I think it would help us all out if we let go of a lot of the way that we used to do things, because it was less inclusive. There are ways to make it more affordable for folks, and having an online option stay part of as much of what we do as we can going forward, I think can only be good. And it sure as heck helped me just as one individual performer and presenter to stay part of a lot of stuff and stay in it and make sure that people could still see my face and hear my voice while we were all stuck, it seemed like forever apart from each other. Mm-hmm. And then at least one other thing I want to say is get y'all an operating budget. Musicians want to help you have an operating budget. Musicians in your community want to help you with this. I have done benefit concerts online to raise money for folks like Circle Sanctuary, folks like the Starwood Festival, one group in Missouri, and a couple of the other festival communities that I have worked with in the past, to help them be able to afford to put on the next online event. If y'all will ask us, we will be happy to do this kind of thing where we host an online concert on our own platform and we send you a portion of the ticket sales after it's over. You don't even have to do anything. You can help us spread the word if you want. But if we're doing our job right, then people are already going to show up to an online show to come and see us, whether or not we attach y'all to it. So yeah, help us get the word out. That would be the most that you would have to do. And then we'll send you a donation to go into your operating budget after the show is over and we ourselves get paid. Very, very straightforward way that musicians and event organizers in our little witchy world, or fill in the blank of witchy if you don't like that word, and I understand, with the word that you do like. Very, very straightforward way that both sides could help each other. And I say both sides, but ain't no sides. We're all in it. We're all in it at the same time. We're all on the same team. I think I want it to be that way.
Right. Very good advice, and I hopefully people are out there
Thank you
taking
for
notes.
holding space for that. Thank you for letting me share that here on
Oh,
your
you're
own
welcome. I think
platform,
it's
sir.
yeah. Oh, I think it's important because I like to go to events. I like to
Yeah.
go to festivals when they're near and around. I mean, I talked about like we had our first in-person troth moot. Unfortunately, we were so
Yes.
far in the woods that we couldn't get a good internet signal, so we weren't able to provide that online component. And it's something that
Yeah.
we has definitely been raised higher up the echelon of things that must be accomplished for the upcoming, ones in following years. Another event
Fantastic.
that I really like to go to that's more local to me is every year in St. Louis, there's a thing called Pagan Picnic in the Park.
I am very familiar with Pagan Picnic. Yes, they have
Yeah, I
hired me
really
many,
love it.
many times.
Yeah, they feature local artisans, and there's always really cool. It's different every year you go. That's why I like it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Pagan
this
Picnic is
year
a good
was
time, y'all, and the park is gorgeous. Tower Park is amazing.
yes, it's amazing. Um, be prepared to walk.
Yeah, no kidding. It is
Just
also not small.
right. Um, this was the first year they had an in-person event since COVID, and
Yeah.
it was really good to see people out again, and it was interesting. And I certainly hope everyone was careful and safe and
Yeah.
managed to stay COVID free and whatnot. But
It's easier to do it when you're not in four walls. And
yeah,
we do like to go play outside, so that helps a little bit. Y'all know this, and you don't need me to tell you this, Lonnie, obviously, but recording the presentations, the workshops, the concerts for later viewing for folks that couldn't make it is something that some festivals have done for a really long time, and they already know how to implement that. So even if there's no Wi-Fi in the woods, which a lot of times I understand, we don't want there to be Wi-Fi in the woods. I get it. There's a record and upload, like give people the option to check it out later if live streaming parts of it isn't possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That might be less of an investment over time too. And even though, cameras go obsolete as soon as we can get one shipped.
This is true. We've tossed around the words pagan and witchy and whatnot concerning events, but how it pertains to yourself, like when did you know that this was going to be sort of the spiritual side of your life? When did it first get exposed to you, and when did you know this is you?
Story time. Okay,
Yeah.
let's set the Wayback Machine for the early aughts, 2002, 2003. I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, had graduated from college, and was recording my first, what would be my first record. It's called Haphazard. It came out in 2004. And that is the CD release party for that is where I personally on my timeline mark the point at which I became a full-time performer without a day job, is when I released that. And I had been studying witchy, esoteric, occulty things with Summerlin Grove Pagan Church there in Memphis, which is a group that is still around, I'm happy to say. And they welcome all comers. They welcome all comers. They will teach anyone who wants to come along and go through what they call their system of realm classes. And they have one year you're like the first year is one element, like earth, air, fire, water, spirit. And if you go all the way up through fifth realm spirit, then you get the option to become clergy in Summerlin Grove. And it's so clergy in fourth realm, I think, and then minister of Summerlin Grove, specifically the fifth year. Maybe I have that switched around. I got past third realm, and then I found out that they wanted me to be clergy council, and I was like, I'm going on the road. You can't catch me. Bye. But I still love that crew, and I work with them. I come home and play festivals when possible, and they still call me and tell me that they want me to come back from time to time. So we're on good terms. And back then I was a seeker. I had no idea what my path was going to be, but they, like I said, they welcome everybody, whether you have your head figured out or not. And so the first year is just to sort of teach you what you could be getting into and give you the option to bail if it turns out to be not what you're looking for. And the second year is more based around getting right with any previous paradigm that you may have been attached to in an earlier part of your life, says the gal who comes from a long line of Methodist lay preachers, whether or not you can believe that. And then from that point forward, you figure out what your own path is going to be. And I thought it was going to be something completely else. I had no clue that I didn't know that it was going to be an option for me to fuse, to entwine my music and my magical practice and have it be that way until I got tired of it, and haven't got tired of it yet. So I'm pretty sure this is a lifelong thing. And it hit me the first summer that I got to go to a festival out of state. So outside of Memphis, outside of Tennessee, I went to Wovenwold in the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, which again is a place that I'm still on good terms with. Beltana Spellsinger, that's her family land. That's where her festivals take place when she hosts them. Love her to death. And that the evening after my first performance for an entire pagan audience of witches that were not in my immediate local community, I went up on the hill with one of my teachers, and it was the middle of the night. The stars were out. The bugs were singing. People were still hanging out of the fire in the valley down below. And he sat me down on a stool under this gigantic, freakishly large sycamore tree on the property. There's no other sycamore tree like this anywhere else on that land. And he said, so I'm going to make an offering right quick, and you're going to play for the spirits. You're going to take out your guitar, you're going to play for the spirits. And I said, all right, because he was not somebody who did things in a specific traditional way. He was a little bit of an outlaw in that community back then. And he knew that I was willing to kind of go there. I was not going to turn and run if something, if we didn't cast a circle a certain way, didn't call the quarters a certain way, that kind of thing. And perhaps I was a fool, but I had a good experience that night, and I really didn't know what to do other than just sit still and play. So that's what I did. Got out my guitar and started to just noodle around and play. And from that night, a piece on my Blessings record, which is the one that most of the witchy folks play on Spotify most often. And I know this because Spotify is one of my biggest playouts. Thank y'all. On Blessings, there's a track called Spirit Call. And I wrote that instrumental after that experience that night. As I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think what to play, and I'm just noodling around on the guitar. And I think to myself, I could play this one tune, Follow Me Down, but it might be a little bit sad. It might be a little bit down tempo for what the land wants. And in my mind, I hear somebody, a voice I do not recognize, say to me, don't worry about that. We just want to hear you play. Just play. So I'm sitting there in the dark. I have heard this in my head, and my eyes get really big, my little 22-year-old eyes, and I say, okay. And I continued to play for quite some time. And when we went down the hill, I could feel like there were some entities that really didn't want to let me be, that wanted to hang on. And so that night too, I learned how to set a boundary and say, no, we're done here. We are done.
How'd you do that? How do you set that boundary?
I pretty much just mentally, again, responding in kind to the way that I had been spoken to in the first place. I was like, no, you're not coming down this hill with me. It's time for me to go. And sort of put the pepper behind my statement with who knows what, I don't know what words to use in this case. Just the force of myself, I guess.
That's fair.
And that thankfully that statement was respected. And it may be because I've got some big bad guys out there that I've never seen before. I really don't know who's watching over me. I try to say thank you when I can tell that maybe, months later, wow, something could have really fucked me up in that experience. And it did not. Possibly somebody else was watching out for me, and I wasn't aware of it. So that was one piece. And then the other piece of it was around that same time period, I'm driving between the day job that I still had, which we will not talk about because it was no fun at all, and my recording session at Young Avenue Sound, in Midtown Memphis, which is the best part of Memphis as far as I'm concerned. And they had me part of a performers recording co-op, recording my first, at the time, CD. Some of us still listen to CDs, y'all. I will not apologize for that. Some of us still record media to CD and sell CDs to people, and only to the people that are going to enjoy them. And some of y'all use them as coasters now, and that's fine. You do you. I'm down with however digital we get, as long as we have a physical backup, so that if the internet goes away on us one day, we don't lose all our stuff. But back to the question at hand. I'm driving to the recording session, and Earth and Sky comes on because I am listening to NPR, as one does when one is a nerd and driving around the back end of 240 from Bartlett to Midtown. And Earth and Sky has come on, and they're talking about new data that has come from the scientists at Cambridge about a black hole in the Perseus galaxy. And they have figured out how to measure the frequency and the pitch of the note that black hole has been singing for time out of mind. And the pitch in question was B flat. And Lonnie, when I tell you I was so excited that I nearly went off the road, I'm not exaggerating. I did not go off the road, but that was my big aha moment of, holy shit, science is studying the fact that music is really, if you put it at the right slant, part of everything, and part of things that are bigger than we can comprehend. And so that was the moment at which I allowed myself to truly step into the thought that music can be used as a form of magic, and that I could use music as magic, as healing, as whatever I needed it to be at the time, and I could do it to help other folks. And that is the core, the thought at the core of me. Whenever I am in front of an audience, whenever I am creating something to be experienced by another human soul, another human set of ears. And I'm very, very grateful that it kind of all happened at once there in my early 20s, because I had known what I wanted to do for a really long time. And a lot of folks don't figure that out for their entire lives. So that can be the really hard part, is finding out who you want to be and what you want to do in the first place. And I had it easy there. I had it easy. I was bullheaded about going into some kind of theater or some kind of music. And I didn't care if I didn't have enough to eat for a while, because everybody warned me, oh, if you go into an artsy job, you're going to be broke. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll be broke then. And it was touch and go in the early days, but I was also swimming in a well of privilege, and had a mom, and still have a mom that I know I can go back to, and that she will take me in without any questions asked. And again, that is not the norm, and I wish that it were. I wish everybody had family and a cushion that they could go back to whenever they needed to, but swimming in an ocean of privilege. I acknowledge it. I recognize it. I knew that if I failed, I would still be all right. That is not something that everybody has. And I'm not a trust fund kid. I have not borrowed. The last time I borrowed money from my mother in a big way was to help fund my second record release in 2005. And she's always checking in with me. She's like, do you need anything? Are you good? And I'm like, Mama, I promise I will tell you. Promise I will let you know. So 2003 was when I really stepped into it. And I had people who were not in the world of magical practice who said to me, Sooj, you could market yourself as Queen of the Bards, and that would be a path you could take. And I feel that I've come a lot closer than they could have conceived of when they said those words to me. Mm-hmm. And it's because we have such a kick-ass community. Like, when it kicks ass, it really, really kicks ass. And there are people that I know me from either sci-fi fantasy fandom, or primarily from the witchy, pagan, spooky, occult, woo-woo world, who will follow my work until I am no longer in a physical incarnation on this planet. And that is the thing that keeps me going. And that is the thing that people that I have interacted with, who have heard something that I have made, as well as the magic and the framework for the give and take that the music and the magic give to me, has allowed me to benefit from in this life.
That is quite a story. I dig it.
Long answer to a short question.
So many things in there. First
Also,
of all,
string theory came along after that, and I was like, what is happening to me? Am I a physicist or am I a witch? I don't even know what to think right now. And a colleague of mine said, you know what? As long as you keep singing, I don't give a shit. And I said, you're right, man. Thanks. That was exactly what I needed to hear right now.
that's right. You are a vibration along a frequency that we call Sooj. So
it is known. It is known. This is the way.
It is known. You're talking about being on that hill, and you didn't know what's looking out for you or whatever. But Ivy Bromius, when she was on the show, she talks about everyone having this thing she calls the spirit posse, and I thought you might like that.
Yes.
Yeah, the spirit posse. Ivy's got some cool stuff out there about that.
There's a posse that knows where I live.
You say that there's a specific song that the witches and pagans tend to drift to on Spotify. And
well, a specific
Spotify is my major platform too, so I get it. Yeah. So is there a song that you think is missed or neglected that you wish they would notice more?
Man, that's a beautiful question. And the trouble is that I haven't been able to put the new stuff out as quickly as I once could. And so I'm like, for years at this point, I've been saying, y'all don't even know what's coming. Y'all don't even know. Y'all don't even know how hard you're about to dance at this next festival. So I have some things up my sleeve that are soon going to be ready to be released upon an unsuspecting world that I think a lot of the occult and witchy folks are going to want to put in a playlist. I certainly hope so. But as for the things that are already out there, there's a newer single that is truly one of the closest things to a devotional piece that I've ever written to magic and to certain powers, whatever we want to call them, called Trickster Prayer. And I released it as a single only on my Bandcamp. It's going to be part of the wider release of the Rootless record when I get that out. That's the next one that I've been working on. And that was going to have a deep, deep witchy focus, as much as the Blessings release did in 2007. And that one has Firebird's Child and Hymn to Hern and In the Name of the Dance and Witch's Rune and a lot of things that people really have told me they're not in so many words, but they're glad they don't have to live without it, because we're hungry as witchy folks, as people who work magic, for stuff that is just for us. And so I'm glad when I get to be the shower head for the thing that is just the right thing. But I would love if more people would check out Trickster Prayer, because it is my tribute to the fact that just about every time I have a memorable encounter with any flavor of the divine masculine, it is a trickster deity from one mythos or another. Almost every time. And they have been extremely gentle with me, let me say. And I would love for that to continue. I would love not to piss any of them off. But tricksters are what they are. And so a lot of people steer clear for reasons that make sense to them. And I recommend that, of course, you have to do what makes you feel safe in your practice. But up to a point, you can be too careful. And I'm not saying, go light you as a bonfire and invite coyote without some preparation. But I am saying that for me, it was the right thing to do, to write them almost a love song, almost a lullaby. And that tune of the recent things that I have let out into the world is one of the more recent, but one of the most deeply rooted in witchy things songs that I have released.
I will make sure that there is a link to that in the show notes, because
I will get it.
I like that. That's what bubbles to the surface with that question. My favorite song of yours is "Dreams of Mississippi."
Ah, sweet! Oh, can we please talk about it? I would love to tell you about that song. I would
love to hear about that song, because it is my favorite.
I've got an online show coming up, and I'm planning to. I have to pre-record a lot of it because we live out in the woods, and as you and I have discussed, internet can be a little bit wonky. One of the reasons I like to stay in with the Trickster Gods is so I can give them offerings before I do any tech stuff. So I can say, please, guys, please let it go smoothly today. I got your whiskey. I got it right here. Please, let's hang out. Let's not fry anything today, please. Let the signal, let the way be open. Let there not be a stop to the signal. But anyhow, I'm planning to film this next one for July. And I don't know when you're going to air the interview, but it doesn't matter. I'll be doing more online shows after that. I'm going to film it in the Deshay County Museum, which was one of my substitutes for daycare when I was 3 and 4 years old, when I was the age that my son is now. My mother volunteered there, and she still does. She is 72 this year, and she's still on the board of that museum and still volunteers there every single week. And it's gotten bigger since I was a little kid. And so I'm going to film a large portion of this next online show in that museum so people can see a different side of where I come from. Because it's county museums can be really wacky. They can be really boring and tiny, but they can also be really wacky and just filled with random shit. And they've got a printing press and a player piano, an entire building of agricultural equipment, pieces of an old post office, pieces of an old bank. And it's fascinating if you're in that childlike frame of mind where everything is new, and if you like old stuff that is cool. So I'm looking forward to setting up shots by the player piano and over by the permanent wave machine, which still terrifies me to this day. That's the one thing in that museum that I'm scared of. All the mannequins when the lights are turned off. No, those are fine. The permanent wave machine that looks like that one droid in that, you remember that movie Spaced Invaders? The evil black droid that followed him around. That's what that thing made me think of. And I was like, nope, not hanging out anywhere near that thing. And then you hear horror stories from older women who had to have their hair done with one of those at the beauty parlor when they were little girls and got their scalps burned and stuff. And I just, no. But coming back to Dream of Mississippi, there is a point to all this, I swear. That's one of the songs that I have on my set list to sing in that museum. I grew up about an hour from the state line, from the Arkansas-Mississippi state line. It's also about an hour from where Jim Henson was as a very small boy. And Leland, Mississippi, where they got the visitor center with the Jim Henson exhibit that's there year round, is because he was, shooting a slingshot and catching frogs there as a tiny boy, long before the Muppets came to be. But the song was sparked by finding out that I was in love enough with this person that I was in love with at the time, who I'm still in love with to this day and have the marriage license to prove it, to go to Hattiesburg because he was going to be working down there for 6 weeks and go visit him. And because I am me, I could not leave it alone and had to make it into a ghost story and make it as spooky as I possibly could, because everybody knows we got ghosts in the South. Everybody knows that we got ghosts in the South that are here for horrific reasons and the horrific things that have been done to people of color and women and people who stuck out, primarily people of color, obviously, and First Nations folks. There's a lot of blood on the ground and a lot of stories that we just will never know because they died with the people who lived them, or they were deathbed confessions that never got confessed. And I wanted to sort of bring all of that into a song without being heavy-handed with it, and also put it into a personal story of mine, which was a simple love story, or it would have been if I were not a spooky songwriter.
Yeah, I really, really like that one. And
I love how much you like that song. It's one of my favorites too.
When I was a guest on Down at the Crossroads myself, they asked me, who do you listen to? What kind of music you like? Because they put music breaks in their show. And I just told them some people that I listened to and let them run with it. And of all the songs they could have picked that you played, they picked that one and put it on that episode, which I thought was fantastic because it was already
Yes,
my favorite. Like, somebody's
that
reading my
was
notes.
that
Yeah.
episode is how I found your podcast in the first place. That Down at the
Ah,
Crossroads
cool.
episodes is how I found you, was how I found your podcast, and how I found Luxicult from your podcast, and
Oh,
on
fantastic.
down the podcast rabbit hole. It has been a good time getting to hear all of your voices these past weird months of
That's
life
fantastic.
being
Yeah.
topsy-turvy. It is true. Chris and Tara are fantastic, and their podcast is fantastic. So Down at the
Yes.
Crossroads, y'all, another
Big fan.
plug for another set of cool people. And
Yeah.
I know
and
you can
found
appreciate.
Luxicult. How cool.
I did, yes. And I heard her use the word audiomancy at some point on a podcast episode somewhere, and I'm like, I may need to borrow that because I like it a lot. I can think of myself. I can own audiomancer when I'm doing a more electronic based thing, which is something that I love to do when I have enough time to devote to it. Most folks know me from my acoustic stuff, but getting to spend more time at home means getting to spend more time learning different software and making these ridiculous gargantuan mixes that have upwards of 60 tracks that are all electronic layers and ambient stuff. And there will be a collaborative project coming up before too long with someone that I respect deeply in a culture, which will be soundscapes and ranting about magic fused together.
That should be fun.
I sure hope so. I want it to be good.
I sure hope so. The way your path has been so intimately mingled with your music. I mean, they kind of found themselves in the same place at the same time, and you've run with it. There's a rich history within words within the cultural history of magical practice and cultures that were polytheistic and more animistic. There's always that bardic figure or skald, the one who keeps the stories of their culture, who shares them in the form of poetry, song, dance, play. I mean, you're occupying a very powerful, resonant current of humanity and sailing along with it. You were
With
talking
great
about how
power
magic
great
and music
responsibility.
yeah, you were talking about how you didn't see how music and magic mingled in the beginning, but like they're so intimately tied together. I think in all creative processes from the very beginning of probably the first person to recognize the rhythm of your heart can make you move your feet, you know.
Well, and we're in this this cultural bubble here in the first world and in the US where we don't necessarily become allowed to learn about things like that on our own until we're old enough to start asking questions that make people uncomfortable. Like we don't have, or we have been robbed of, because of things like colonialism, having access to family traditions that we otherwise would have just grown up with. And this is one of the reasons that I am a huge fan of this folk magic renaissance that is happening right now, and watching people get back into researching folkways. And oh gosh, I'm trying to remember, sometime on the New World Witchery podcast, it was brought up, Via Hedera, that's who it was. Via Hedera brought up that the best way to learn about folkways and to sort of find a getting on place with traditions that you're curious about, or to find out what's there in your area, the history and all kinds of stuff, is to go volunteer at a community center and go listen to old folks. Don't bring up the magic. Don't say the word witch, because everybody's going to clam up if you do. But so many folklorists will say the same thing, and you're never going to hear it. You're never going to hear a story from a local until you become a local yourself. Mm-hmm. And I know that in some ways that's true because of, again, things like colonialism, where it just wasn't safe to talk about stuff that you just did that nowadays we consider magical practice, and nowadays we consider something special instead of just something that we would always do. And so I love that folk magic is getting rightly deserved attention, I think, but I don't want it to, of course, there's a danger of it being taken out of context and not done respectfully.
Sure.
There's danger of everything, of anything being taken that way. But I think we are learning as a community, I hope to goodness, to do better there. And I know again that it can wear you out to try to do a good job, but it's so important. That's the reason that they call it work.
Yeah.
The work is never going to be done, and it is work because folks who came before us who didn't know any better have made that into the work that we got to do, is find the respectful way to learn about things and to move forward and to incorporate practices that have perhaps been around for a while and perhaps not into our own. And I know that I get a lot of license as a musician, but also what I was going to say about the dominant culture, the overculture, if you will, is that it doesn't necessarily think of music as a power while it's thinking of it as a commodity. Like, how many musicians are not even taken seriously by members of Congress when they've been household names for decades? Things like that. And people not having the option, not knowing that they have the option to put value on something if it's not on the top 40 for whatever week. Like, what if this is a legitimate, what if it's a house blessing song that actually works and you don't recognize it because you just don't have the cultural framework to do so. And gosh, just in a folk magic context, I know there's so much that I'll never even have time to learn, but I have a couple of songs now that I've written as respectfully as I can that touch on some of the local, like the hyper local folkways and folk magic stuff that I've learned about because I've had time spending much more time here at home in the South and less on the road. And that comes back to be to Dream of Mississippi also. I thought this land had taught me all that I could possibly learn, but nope. It turns out that there are always more stories. There are always more stories. There's always more to learn.
There's always more to learn. You are absolutely correct, especially when it comes to your own local history, folklore.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot to peel back out there. A great
and
deal.
Just going out and listening to the land, right? You can tell just from talking to me today that I believe very strongly in spirits of place. And now more than ever, having been forced to interact with one particular spirit of place for so long, staying at home throughout the beginning of this entire decade that we're in. But I have been rewarded just from the little bit of effort I have put into getting to know the spirits of the land that I am on at present. And the way that manifested during early COVID, when I would take a walk every day, and still do when it's not blazing hot like it is today, to get my mind right and to just have that be, if I didn't interact with the land in any other way that day, I would. And right now I live on the site of my husband's family's summer camp, which they ran from 1968 to 1993. It wasn't a church camp. It wasn't a 4-H camp. It was just camp. They were required to have some kind of church service on Sundays. So my father-in-law would more often than not end up reading Yertle the Turtle to the kids. And that would be their service. Yeah. These are the kind of people I want a home church with. That's for sure. Yeah. And we live out here now. So there are things that this land remembers, even in the last century, that if these trees could talk, they would tell amazing stories about watching entire generations grow up and come and go. And so we've got like a 14-acre lake, and the family still lives on the property as well. My in-laws, my husband's grandmother, when she was alive, our aunt and uncle live on the other side of the field from us. So we've got a little village right here. And a lot of the buildings from the campsite are still here. A lot of my recording studio is in what used to be the 8 and 9-year-old boys' cabin. And so I sort of kind of try to honor the lost boy energy that's in there whenever I go out there. And that building itself did not feel like I had a good relationship with it until I took a step back. Like, we were cleaning out manky linoleum and squirrel nests and bird shit, and I was getting overwhelmed. And then I went, now wait a minute, it wants to be yours. It wants to be something cool again. It's been sitting for 20 years and just used to, as a storage spot, not even a particularly well organized one, and an ill-fated movie set once or twice, but that's it. So it wants to be something beautiful again. And then I started singing to it. And I took my incense out there, and I took one of my little bamboo flutes out there and would just noodle around and just say good morning and sing a little bit and walk in a circle with the incense. And after that, everything got easier. The wiring got easier, putting in insulation and flooring got easier. And we have a great relationship now, me and that little one-room house. And during early COVID, I was walking around the levee, around the lake every day, like I described earlier. And I had a conversation with my uncle where he and I were just being real with each other about how we were worried what was going to happen with the supply chain and things like that. And he said, I don't know what people are going to be like. And he was honest with me about it. And after we concluded that, I was still on my walk. And Lonnie, I started finding 4-leaf clovers by the fistful. Oh, and wow. I have continued to find them ever since on this land. And it was just such a great big, it's going to be fine. I got you. Stay here as long as you need to. You will be safe. You and your loved ones here are going to be fine. You will be safe. I got you. Just over and over. And just how much clearer could it get? How much clearer a message from the land could you get? And that is the kind of reward that could potentially come when a person puts in the time. And this is a fun spooky fact too. My mother also finds 4-leaf clovers, and I was not able to do it. I did not get the knack from her until I came of age, until I was in my early to mid 20s. And I looked and looked and looked as a kid, but it may just be that she taught me how to look, but and that pattern recognition has settled in my brain now that I have my frontal lobe and all that. But right. I never found them. I never found more than one at a time until 2020. And I just started finding handfuls on my walk.
That's pretty cool.
And when I was deeply afraid, deeply uncertain, not real sure if I was even going to have a career if the world ever put itself right. And all of those worries have since been put to rest in large ways. But obviously the world is still upside down and we still have a lot of work to do. But man, I cannot express how cool it was to reach out to a spirited place, even not in so many words, but just to be seen. If that was more than a coincidence, which I think it has to have been, just for me personally, just to get that kind of response. Wow.
Agreed. I think that's an amazing experience. I like it when things connect like that. It's beautiful.
And I know the science, I know the botany, I know that 4-leaf clovers are a mutation. I know they're not as uncommon as people may make it out to be, but that was profound for me personally.
Yeah, something personal at a time when it actually matters to the subject at hand. Yes. Those are the things that I think is important for people who are into witchcraft and magical practices, to stop belittling, to stop trying to explain away, to just allow yourself to have those moments in that connection. and
Thank you.
and cherish
Yes,
it the way it is. Yeah.
I wanted to say something along those lines, like be open to the whimsy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we need to be down with the science. We need to keep ourselves apprised of what the facts are and what the science is with vaccines, with whatever else is coming out in the world, with these amazing telescope photos that are coming back
Right.
just now. Holy moly. But also leave yourself open to be open to the wonder. Be
Mm-hmm.
open to the wonder, because it's gonna come. But it's not gonna come if the door is shut.
That's right. So, I mean, we're talking about land spirits and things like that. Um, where you have lived, any place where you've lived, is there something that's uncommon that people may not know about that is a place of magic or myth or important to the local history that somehow moves in a more interesting, magical, connected to spirit way that people could
Mm.
visit, but they may not be aware of?
Well, I will advocate for the champion bald cypress here in Arkansas. If you are a person who loves to connect with trees, there ain't no bigger tree. And everyone knows about the redwoods. And if you don't know about the redwoods, then you need to get over there if time and money allow. I also love the redwoods, but there may be, if you're willing to get hyper local and bioregional, these lovely new words that folks have come out with that I really really resonate with. There may be places that are closer to home than you think, and that's been so true for me. But the first thing that I thought of when you asked that question, and I think you can go online actually and look up where the champion bald cypress is. And right now in the summer, in this wild drought that we're having, it would be a good time to go, because she's in the middle of a swamp, so you cannot get there at all times of year. You cannot get there when the rain comes, because there's just no path for a biped to traverse, and maybe not even in a little boat, maybe not even in a canoe with a paddle could you find this tree safely. But that tree is down in the Delta, close to where I was raised. And I have another Delta story for you, but I'm going to save that until later, because it's going to tie in with a question that I know is going to come. The first thing that I thought of was actually not a place that I have lived, but a place that I just recently visited for the first time that was a bucket list thing for me. And I may have to ask you to pause us so that I can go and look up the name of the mountaintop sanctuary that this was. But I got to visit the island of Crete for the first time with a bit of an occult focused tour group, a bit of a magical practice, a bit of an ancient herstory focused tour group. And once you have been there for a few days, you will notice that there are Minoan ruins literally everywhere. In the minute you know what to look for, you cannot not see them. They are all over the island. They are all over Crete. They are on every hillside. They're in some people's backyards. Goats just chilling, eating brambles in a ruin that has been there longer than anyone that any of us has ever met. And we went to a mountaintop sanctuary ruin that had been pretty well preserved. We hopped the fence. We found where the altar used to be, however many tens of thousands of years ago. And we all left an offering of honey or flowers or something along those lines, something natural. I brought a quartz crystal from home because I go up in the Ouachitas and I collect those off the ground in places where surface collecting is allowed, as long as you don't have anything larger than a hand tool. Something else I recommend that is local for people to come and do, because you hear about the diamond mines here in Arkansas, but there are also places where you can go and collect crystal points right up off the ground, and it's okay to take them home. So I had one of those with me in Crete, and I included that as my offering for this mountain. And because I am me, I also sang a bit. And the other people in my group were holding a hum together to sort of keep the energy cooking while we were all leaving our offering, and to make sure that nobody else felt embarrassed or alone or like it was too quiet. because sometimes when you're in a new situation, you get nervous. You might get tongue tied and not know what to say. But having other people there vocalizing can help a little bit. And of course, I would say that as a singer, but give it a try sometime if you haven't. Anyone listening. And when we were walking back to the van, when we were hiking back down, walking back to the van, my roommate, with tears in her eyes, said, "Did you hear it?" She kept going, so I didn't have to say yes or no. She said, "The mountain was singing harmony with you." While you were singing, she said, "I thought someone else had started to sing harmony with you, and I was getting pissed off to kind of turn around and tell him to shut up and give you your time. But no one else was singing out loud. Everyone was humming. No one was singing except you, but I heard other voices. The mountain was singing back. The mountain was singing along with you." And I found out later that she was not the only person who had heard it at the time. I didn't hear it myself because I don't, through the mechanics of singing and having bones and sinuses and things or whatever, or just being hyper focused on what I was doing at the time, I could only hear my own voice, and only from the inside of my ears, from the inside of my head. So I did not hear it myself, but I treasure the fact that she heard it and that others heard it and were not shy about telling me what they heard.
Right.
So that was my latest incredible sort of audiomancy experience, accidental audiomancy related experience out in the world that I can share with people. And I haven't really, this podcast is the first time I've really had a chance to talk about it, actually, since I got back.
Nice. Yeah. Exclusive content only
I'm
on
telling
Weird
you.
Web Radio.
I'm telling you, you heard it here first. But back to the crystal hunting, I'm for real about that. There are places up in the Ouachita National Forest that you can go should you happen to find yourself in my little witchy part of Arkansas. And when I say the Ouachitas, I'm talking about the Ouachita Mountain Range, which is for some considered part of the Ozarks, and part of the Ozarks. The Ozarks are considered for some part of the Appalachians. But the Ouachitas are older still. They are softer still. They are rounder still. They are greener still. They are spookier still, as far as I'm concerned. And I haven't had any supernatural encounters out there. But even around here, we have our own lake monster stories, our own skunk, ape, Sasquatch, Bigfoot stories. We have our own river monster stories. Even there's a Nessie relative, some say, in the White River in northeast Arkansas, which my mother likes to call the other Delta. And unfortunately, they have the least imaginative name possible connected with the river. They decided to name the monster Whitey. I think we can do better. I really do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm open to suggestions for names for the White River monster. But in 1978, I learned this is a little piece of local lore. The state legislature actually named a certain acreage to be the White River Monster official wildlife refuge. And I don't know if it held up, because our legislature has gotten up to plenty of shenanigans in my lifetime. So I don't know if it's still protected, but we did have a river monster protected wildlife refuge for a time.
That's something to be proud of. I like that. It should be on the Welcome to Arkansas sign.
I dig it.
Yeah, I dig it for sure. Since we've said spooky and supernatural and all those things, if you've listened to the show, then you must know what's coming next. Sooj, have you ever experienced a haunting? I mean, you went to a poetry thing that was haunted as fuck. Direct quote. Where else have you been? You've been a few places you said were haunted as fuck.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you had that experience. Have you had
Correct.
an experience of a haunting?
I have not had a visual haunting experience before in my life. I have had some auditory hauntings, some olfactory hauntings. Right here on this summer campsite where I currently sit. And the most recent one, and they've all been very gentle. I have not been scared silly by anything, but there are plenty of places where I could go and sign myself up to get scared silly if I felt like it. Dumas, Arkansas, my hometown, is about an hour from Monticello, Arkansas, where stands the Allen House, which has at least one book written about it as far as hauntings and supernatural activity goes. And I have one friend who grew up in that town who said, yeah, we used to run past that house when we were walking home from school.
Those are the best ones.
I'm telling you. I can't remember I think the book is just called Haunted, and it's written by the current Dean of Arts and Letters at University of Arkansas, Monticello, which is where my mother got her master's degree, incidentally. But if you look up the Allen House, you'll find plenty of spooky history there, because people have done their work to share it with the world. But only in 2008, I think, did they find the letters in the attic of the woman who had unalived herself in that house and was purportedly the main ghost, the main mover and shaker in the Allen House. But the hauntings that I have experienced here in my own place were a very clear 3 knocks upon a wooden door where I was standing way far away from any buildings. That it was like a cop knock, and I was not standing near any of the I was not standing near any of the buildings at the time. I did not say come in, because I know better. But I have not heard that one since, and that was about a year ago. And the most recent one was at the beginning of this summer, and that was one of the clearest scent related hauntings that I have ever experienced in my life. I was getting up really early. My son has turned me into a morning person, and that's mostly a good thing. As long as he doesn't get up when I get up, I like to have a little bit of time to myself before anybody else in the house is awake. And musicians don't always experience that in their lifetime, so I'm grateful to have had that shift, because we some sleeping in people, musicians, but now I get to have morning time more frequently. But I was getting up early so that I could take a walk before it got beastly hot outside. So just at sunrise, pretty much, I'm going to take a walk around the levee. It's about a mile and a half. So enough to get the day going for me, in beautiful, shady terrain for the most part. And I think, okay, I look at the clock and I'm like, okay, I've got about 45 minutes. So if I really book it, I can probably get back before the fellas wake up, before my husband or my son gets out of bed, because it's usually me at the bottom of the stairs when my kiddo wakes up, and he comes downstairs and then runs into my arms, and we have a big hug, and that's how we start our day. And my husband sleeps a little bit longer than that, and then he'll get up and have coffee, and we'll mosey on through whatever we have planned. So I'm trying to get back before my son wakes up so that he won't wake up my husband, and then all of us wake up and my husband be a little bit grumpy before he was ready to get out of bed. So I try to take first shift these days to be with my son, and then let my husband take over in the afternoon, so that I have a work window, which allows me to do things like interview for podcasts.
Yeah.
And so I'm coming back around from the levee and walking across the yard along the lakeshore toward my house, which is a little 2-story flat top A-frame that used to be a game room, a canteen, and the senior counselor's party room. There's a 4-square court on the floor, on the concrete floor downstairs. And I smell pipe smoke. And I immediately think, well, shit, I wasn't fast enough. My husband is awake. I've got to run in there and make breakfast for my child. And I get in the house and no one is awake. And I don't know whose pipe smoke that was, because no one else on the property smokes a pipe. No one else was awake. In my generation, some of my in-laws were probably awake, but neither of them smokes a pipe. Only my husband, and only in the morning, usually. So it could have been any number of spirits we have or have not interacted with before. It could have been someone from his family. It could have been somewhere who lived here before any of us did. It could have been, who knows? It could have been my dad, who also smoked pipe tobacco. But my dad was long gone before I ever came here, before I ever set foot on this place. So I don't know who was haunting us. But again, I am grateful that it was such a gentle haunting, and, more made me curious and delighted than worried in any way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. For moments like that, my recommendations always kind of go with your first instinct.
Yeah.
Your intuition probably knows, your spirit posse, as they were, have probably sent some signal to your subconscious, and it's when you start to question it and wondering, get overly curious, you probably missed the point in the signal. So your
good
first
point.
intuition,
It may have just been the posse being like, "Hey, they're about to wake up."
Yeah.
All ass. It could have been the posse being like,
ass.
Hey, he's waking up. Which,
coffee isn't going to brew itself. No.
Just as valuable. I'm just as grateful if that's the case.
That's right. Well, I think this is a good point to come to the end of our first broadcast. I think it's really important to send an open-ended invitation. You come back anytime you want. Deal?
Thank you, sir. Don't you threaten me with a good time.
Yeah.
It's time to do a weekly thing. I'm starved for adult conversation over here. In the woods with a toddler.
Yeah, I've not been there, but I feel you. Is there anything that you would like to talk about, something that I didn't bring up that you would like to cover?
Well, I do want to invite any other musicians who might be listening who want a home platform for online shows, to whether COVID continues to fuck up our lives and our touring lives or not, to come and check out onlineconcertthing.com. That is the platform that hosts my online shows. It is run by bandmates of mine up in Canada who I trust implicitly. They run a very, very straightforward sort of streaming platform where you can go live or you can run a pre-recorded show. It's up to you. And it's run through the OBS software, which a lot of us are familiar with. That's open source and it's free. And for me, it was pretty easy to get the hang of. So if you are looking for a place in addition to or apart from the various social media flavors and places like Twitch to come and give an online show, take a look at onlineconcertthing.com and reach out to admin Ben, who is Ben at onlineconcertthing.com, and just see if y'all could set something up. It has been very, very, very useful and very helpful for me for keeping the lights on when it has not been safe to go out on the road as much.
Okay. I will make sure that that's in the show notes so people can find that too. That sounds pretty cool. It's
been hella useful for me and a lot of the people that I run with. We've it's hard when you miss all your people to keep your spirits up. Those of us who are, and I don't necessarily count myself an extrovert every single day. Like I'm good with alone time most of the time, but also it's hard to not be with community when you have even just a digital way, even just an online way to reconnect with community, and with a live chat if you want one. That's one of the things that I love about running pre-recorded shows is the live chat is right there. So I can watch along with everybody else. And it's like I'm time traveling. I'm singing to you and I'm typing with you at the same time. And we're hanging out in the chat. It's like it's some of the coziest concert options on the whole internet. And so that really both helped me keep the bills paid and helped me keep my spirits up when touring was just a fool's errand and completely unsafe. And then I also want to say, if anybody wants to keep up with me on the socials, follow me on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon Music, whatever is your flavor. I am in most places, social media and streaming music services as SJ Tucker Music. That's all. My personal socials are SJ Tucker Music, except for Twitter, because I was ornery that day. and then sjtucker.com is the best place to start if you want to find me and see what I'm up to.
I like it. Again, every bit of that will be in the show notes, so nobody has to worry about Googling.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time being here today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, sir. I feel the same.
Yeah, and since you already told people where to find you, I think we've satisfied those requirements. So
Nice.
Everyone listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please go check out everything that Sooj does on music and social platforms. Please support her on her online concerts. And musicians, please do go check out this new resource. I think you have something really cool set up, and hopefully it helps. Meanwhile, if you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you're going to have to go to Patreon. That's super easy. It is patreon.com/weirdwebradio, or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. Thank you for listening. Stay weird out there, my friends. And now it is bonus audio time.
Dun, dun, dun.
Are you ready?
Hit me. Let's do this.
You look really mischievously ready.
I've got a cheat sheet, man. I'm ready to go.
All right. First question in this house is always the same. What famous person's resting place do you most want to visit?
All right, I got a list.
Do you want to hear how they just answered that question? What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit? That and many others, including what they think about the afterlife, what they may or may not do in cemeteries, what are their traditions and magical practices that have to do with the dead, folklore that surrounds their homes, and so much more, available for only $5. $5 a month. Even if I make more than one episode in a month, it's still just $5 a month at patreon.com/weirdwebradio, or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. You can find me on Instagram at weirdwebradio. You can find me on Facebook as Weird Web Radio, or come join the new, fun and exciting Weird Web Radio Facebook group. Thank you again for being here. Stay weird out there, my friends.